The greatest threat to our culture is not the political left, and it's not the political right either. It's something much older, and it's something every civilization eventually struggles with. It's the moment that our identity becomes more important than our humanity. It's the moment that belonging to a tribe becomes more important than staying awake. It's the moment whether or not you are right or wrong becomes more important than being whole as a human. And this is happening everywhere. Everywhere right now. You cannot go 5 minutes online and not seeing people who are clearly only committed to proving that they are correct. And it's not only in politics, this is in sports, this is in religion, this is in art, in our subcultures, in our families, in our friendships, everywhere. People are constantly wanting to know, what side are you on? Are you conservative? Are you liberal? Are you Christian? Are you a true Christian? Are you progressive? Are you a traditionalist? Are you a Marxist? Are you spiritually awakened? Have you escaped the matrix? Are you one of us? Or are you one of them? Because we have become so uncomfortable with people that we cannot easily categorize. But this pattern is actually not new. If you look at life, and if you've watched any of my other videos, I look at patterns a lot. I like to look back in history and see what these patterns are. And these patterns have been going on for many, many years. Ultimately, it boils down to us versus them. But it shows up as orthodox or heretic, saved or lost, civilized or barbarians, believers, infidels, left versus right. But these are all just different costumes to the exact same consciousness. These are two sides of the same coin. And every generation believes our division is different, but it rarely is. The Pharisees and the Sadducees, they believed that they were defending the truth. Catholics and Protestants went to war, killing each other, while they were defending their own version of the true God, the true Christian God. The French Revolution promised liberty, but eventually they built the guillotine. Every age invents a new reason to divide itself, and every age believes that its hatred is more justified than the hatred that came before. Did you hear that? Every age invents a new reason to divide itself, and every age believes that its hatred is more justified than the hatred that came before. History changes uniforms, consciousness repeats the pattern. Now I'm going to be clear with something. The problem here is not difference, and it's not disagreement. Disagreement is healthy. Difference is healthy. Conviction is healthy. The problem is when another human being becomes an abstraction. They become a stereotype and a symbol. That one person represents a whole enemy. Because the thing is, once someone becomes merely an idea, it's so much easier to hate what they are. Because you're not really thinking about who they are. Think about the common labels that are thrown around in your life and in your communities, perhaps on a daily basis. Do you use these words? Or how often do you or your friends or people around you refer to someone that you disagree with simply by a term, an ism, an ist? It could be even like a joking, mocking term, whatever it is. Every single act of dehumanization, it begins in our imagination, and then it shifts to language. And before we can actually justify harming somebody in the world, we need to flatten them. We need to turn them into a category. We need to stop seeing their face, their family. We need to stop listening to their story and stop imagining the wounds that perhaps factored into how they came to believe what they believe and things that they care about. And once this happens, almost anything can be justified. The extreme middle way that I'm talking about is not moderation, and it's not compromise, and it's not ideological milquetoast. It's not refusing to have conviction. It certainly is not cowardice. In fact, one of the strangest manipulations of our time is that we are constantly being told, if you're not with us, then you're against us. You're pressured to prove your moral worth by how loudly you condemn the other side. And if you don't perform that condemnation correctly, someone will call you a coward, or complicit, or naive, or dangerous, or secretly, you're one of them. This is not consciousness. This is not spiritual expansion and development. That is coercion. That is tribal identity, trying to disguise itself as moral clarity. And this is why the middle way is actually extreme, because it asks something that very few people are willing to practice: to remain deeply convicted without becoming possessed by your convictions, to care about justice without becoming hatred, to be able to recognize evil without needing to dehumanize, to tell the truth without turning truth into a weapon for your ego. The extreme middle way isn't afraid to be misunderstood. In fact, it will almost guarantee that you will be misunderstood, because people who are committed to their own tribal consciousness will always interpret nuance as betrayal, all the time. They will always interpret compassion or love as weakness. They will always interpret refusal to hate as complicity. But that does not mean your path along the middle way is weak. It may be one of the bravest paths left. And strangely enough, a lot of the people who seem to be so vocal about not being hateful these days are some of the most hate-filled and the most hate-fueled individuals that I've ever seen. And this manifests in many of our great spiritual teachers. And so often they sorely disappointed people. They refuse to become useful to the tribe. Jesus continually disappointed the righteous ones who wanted him to become their political champion. They tried to trap him. They tried to force him into every binary gotcha question. They tried to get him to perform allegiance again and again. He would redirect the question and refused to stay inside their trap. Render under Caesar. Love your enemies. Forgive them. The kingdom of God is within you. Those are not great political slogans. I mean, that would be pretty funny to go to some of these rallies and see some of these sayings of Jesus on a sign. It wouldn't work. Or if they do, they kind of twist them and try to manipulate them to say something they're not saying. These were actually invitations to another level of consciousness. And that's the kind of consciousness that is actually dangerous to a world that is committed to staying trapped in a low-level consciousness. And it's not because it's violent. It's because it can't be controlled. Gandhi understood this. If you've ever seen the movie Gandhi, it's awesome. It's a great entry point if you're just not familiar with Gandhi's teachings or sayings. Very great movie to pretty accurately encapsulate his life if you're not going to go into a deep dive. So I recommend the movie. But anyway, the person, Gandhi, not Ben Kingsley, he was not passive. He was not weak. He was not moderate in a shallow sense. He was extreme in his refusal to let hatred become the method. And that's because if hatred becomes the method, hatred also becomes the outcome. And he was hated for it. He was criticized for it and eventually killed for it. Because the person who refuses to hate on command will always disturb the people who need hatred to hold their worldview together. And this is where art matters. So I don't just talk about spiritual things or whatever topic this may be. This is an art and spirit channel. It's called Art and Void for a reason. And if you haven't watched any of my other videos, I recommend, I'll link one here that I think would be relevant to this conversation. Foundation beneath all of this is. And art really matters because art interrupts tribal consciousness. It bypasses it completely. Think about this. You watch a beautiful film that opened your mind and your heart and suddenly you want to hug the stranger next to you. Or you can see life through a lens of somebody you would have ignored walking down the street. Or you're standing in a mass of strangers that are hot and sweaty and gross, and suddenly you're all singing the same chorus together. You're all dancing to the same beat together. And for a few moments, politics disappears, religion disappears, statuses disappear, and everyone remembers that they are human. Not because they're suddenly agreeing on everything, but because they are participating in something deeper than agreement. This is what art can do. It doesn't erase differences, it restores relationships. This is why authoritarian cultures have always feared artists. And it's not because artists always criticize power, sometimes they do. But the deeper reason is this. Art reminds us that another human being is not an ideology. They're a living mystery. And living mysteries are so much harder to control than categories. This is what separates art from propaganda. Propaganda will tell you what to think. Art deepens your capacity to perceive. Propaganda gives you enemies. Art gives you humanity. Propaganda simplifies. Art reveals complexity. Propaganda wants your allegiance. Art, it wants your attention. Great artists rarely tell us who to hate. They remind us of who we are. And this is why someone like Nick Cave, who I admire a lot, wasn't a saint, and he wasn't someone above contradiction. He's a human. But as an artist who understands that art can carry something sacred without becoming a sermon. And he wrote, this is a quote from him, "The actualizing of God through the medium of the love song remains my prime motivation as an artist." That's amazing. Notice what he didn't say. He didn't say my job was to win arguments. He didn't say my job was to defeat ideological enemies. He didn't say my job is to manufacture agreement. He said his work on this earth is to make love songs through which something divine might become visible. This is why people will leave his concert describing it as a spiritual experience or as church. It's because the artist's role is not always to preach. And we see this happen so many times. As soon as anyone gets some success or even not success, artists suddenly forget that their role is to, what I believe, the artist's role is to be a vessel. Instead of being that vessel for art, they become very vocal about their opinions and start divisions. And I believe that the artist's role is to be a vessel, a humble vessel, and to reveal humanity, to make people feel something true enough that their defenses drop and disintegrate for a moment at least. Not to be a propagandist, not to stir up outrage, and not to dig your heels into another tribe, but to provide a deeper encounter with what it means to be alive. Art doesn't erase differences. It restores relationships. And this is the heart of what I mean when I talk about this phrase, the extreme middle way. It's not about having no opinions or positions, and it's not about being polite and tepid and just keeping the peace and avoiding conflict. It's not about pretending that evil doesn't actually exist or that everyone is just equally correct. That's not what I mean. There are things in this world worth confronting. There are things in this world worth exposing and injustices worth resisting. And there are sometimes moments where being quiet is actually cowardice. But the question really, ultimately I'm getting to is what kind of consciousness are you bringing to the confrontation? Are you speaking with clarity? Or are you speaking from possession? Are you seeking truth, or are you actually seeking dominance? Are you trying to heal something? Or are you simply feeding on your pleasure of having an enemy? Because there is a kind of righteousness, it's self-righteousness, that does not make the soul more loving. It only makes the ego more certain. And so we are seeing this everywhere, again, online, in churches, in activist spaces, in political movements, in sports. Everyone is always disagreeing. In artistic scenes, which really breaks my heart, because I'll probably speak about this on a different video, but artists used to be a community of true acceptance, and it's become what I'm talking about here in many of our subcultures. And everywhere we go, we see people actually not really being spiritually developed. They are performing their moral certainty, while their hearts become smaller and smaller. So my message here is not that we need more centrists, we need more moderates. What we don't need are more people being captured and performing based on their outrage, or more ideological purity tests. People proving that they are really good by publicly condemning whatever tribe they decided is evil this week. I think the world needs people whose consciousness has become large enough to refuse the seduction of hatred. People who can stand for something without needing to destroy someone else. You know, you can confront someone you love and talk to them and speak to the goodness, even when you vehemently disagree. What we really need is people who will create beauty in a culture addicted to ugly. And you can do this without becoming naive. This is the extreme middle way. It's not political, it is spiritual. It is choosing to remain radically human in a culture that constantly rewards becoming a tribe. And maybe that's why so many of our great teachers, spiritual teachers and our spiritual enlightened ones, eventually they disappoint the people who wanted to get them to pick a side, because they were serving something much older and much larger than the ideology of the time. Maybe the greatest act of rebellion left is to refuse to let anyone convince you that another human being is beyond the reach of love. So maybe again, the question isn't what side am I on? Maybe you need to ask the question to yourself in these moments is, what's happening inside of me? Do I need an enemy right now? Am I willing to look at that before I try to fix the whole world? And if I am an artist, what is my actual role? Can I create something so beautiful that all of these divisions simply dissolve and we can reconnect as humans, heart to heart, once again? Thank you for watching this video. If you made it this far, I think maybe I deserve a like and a subscribe. But what I would really love is to hear your experience, your response to this, and see if we can actually embody this, see if we can actually have a dialogue. If you just want to share your experience, share your experience. Let's practice this. Let's create and cultivate this goodness within ourselves and in these conversations. You can disagree with me. That's part of the beauty of what this message is all about. If you're looking for more resources, go to Art and Void. There's a link below. I have my book, 33 Meditations for Artists. I also am going to be doing some group gatherings and things like that. And I do offer very limited one-on-one mentorship if that's something you're looking for in your life. Thanks again for watching. Remember that the void is not an emptiness to be feared, but a space of infinite possibility waiting to be explored.